it's better that you don't have a city manager in there as long as you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes you need fresh eyes.
Not sure if I agree with that, but.
Well, in your case, it's a little different. I think you should stay forever.
No, no. You gotta make room for the rest. So, that's all right. Finding these banana peels outside my office though. Remember?
There's advantages to having paperless agendas when you're home because you can look on your screen. But when you come here, you realize you don't have an agenda. Do you have some printed?
Yeah, we do.
If you do, I mean, I can look at it on here. I mean, that's fine.
Mine keeps turning off.
Oh, does it keep turning?
Yeah,
Okay.
but I did bring one. Oh,
We
that's
always
me.
have extras just for this emergency.
Well, I have an agenda. I just don't have that. But this is fine. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, it is 9 o'clock.
Okay,
Does it look like we have a quorum?
we have,
Tony Barrera, we do have a quorum.
yes, we do,
Okay.
with Michael Barr and Tony Barr, yeah,
Oh, and
and Michael Barr, yeah.
Okay.
There.
Yeah, he's.
Well, welcome everyone to the February 13th MST Board Operations Performance Committee, and it is 9 o'clock. And due to the certain expiration of certain directives contained in the Governor's Declaration of Emergency for the state of California, Executive Order N 2920, the Board of Directors of the Monterey Salinas Transit District will hold meetings in person and via Zoom virtual meeting as indicated below. So there is a in-person participation here in the at 19 Upper Ragsdale in Suite 100, and then there is also the Zoom participation, and that is listed on the agenda. With that, at this time, I would like to go ahead and call the meeting to order and ask for a roll call, Jeanette.
City of Carmel by C. Jeff Dunn,
here,
City of Gonzales, Lorraine Worthy,
Here.
City of King, Mike LaBar,
Present.
City of San City, Miriam Carbone,
Here,
City of Salinas, Tony Barrera,
here,
City of Seaside, David Chico. Okay, we do have a quorum.
okay. And is Dave Pacheco on this board?
Oh, I'm sorry. No,
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome everyone, and thank you. We do have a quorum, and we'll move on to public comments on matters not on the agenda. So at this time, members of the public may address the board on matters not on the agenda, but relating to MST. And there's a time limit of not more than 3 minutes, and public comment is open.
I do not see anyone with their hand raised online, and we do not have anybody here in the boardroom.
Okay, thank you.
offering
Thank you.
public comment.
Thank you, Carl. With that, we'll go ahead and close public comment, and we will move on to the consent agenda. 3.1. So there is 3.1 is approval of minutes of the Board of Operation Performance BOPC committee of December 12th, 2022. And at this time, are there any questions from the committee regarding this item? And seeing none, we'll go ahead and take this out to the public for public comment. If anyone from the public would like to comment on this item.
Again, I see no one with their hands raised and no one in the public here offering comment.
Okay. So at this time, we will go ahead and close public comment, and I will put it out there. I'm looking for a motion for approval.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve.
Okay, and I think I heard a second.
Tony,
Tony,
I think it was Tony.
Yes, Tony,
Mhm.
so we have Worthy.
Yes.
Motion, Ferrera with the second.
okay, and with that roll call vote,
Okay, Director Barron,
Yes.
Director Worthy.
Yes,
Director LeVar,
aye.
Director Carbone,
Aye.
and Director Rivera.
Yes.
The motion passed
Yeah.
with all 5 directors.
Okay, thank you, Jeanette. With that, we'll move on to action item 4.1. And this is review of operation performance. And this you can be found on agenda item 7.1. And Carl, I believe this is yours.
Sure, and this is what we do, just a quick review, really going into the board report, starting on, in your board packet, starting on page 55, or I'm sorry. Page 97.
7.
You have your dashboards through December, first half of the fiscal year. And you can see that we're continuing to grow our ridership and not just our ridership, but also our productivity. So that means we're carrying more passengers on our buses. That means our buses are getting more full. We're still within our meeting or exceeding all of our performance targets that we report on regular with regard to on-time performance. One section that we haven't met in 3 years is the fare box recovery ratio, which is a state mandated performance measure that has been suspended since COVID went into place, but only through active efforts of our transit association to keep this ratio from being put, having us measured against that. In the past, it's been used to limit our accessibility to state funding. There is a push within our industry to just eliminate this fare box recovery ratio as a mandate once and for all. And so we'll see if we're successful in doing that at a state level, because lo and behold, for the past 3 years, there hasn't been a transit operator in the state that's met at the state mandated fare box recovery ratio. And it seems that everybody's still operating. Nothing bad has happened. So we're thinking of trying to get rid of that as an association. If you go on, you can see our cash flow on page 102 remains strong. Even though our ridership is up from January 2023 to January 2022, I think we had a 20% increase in ridership over the two. We're still only at about 50% of our ridership from a 3-year average before COVID. So we still have, if our goal is to get back to where we once were, we still have some time to get there. It's going to take a while, and there's some issues going on in the local economy with hospitality workers, students coming back to school. We're still not at the levels we were pre-COVID, and that impacts our ridership. Really, from a performance, you're going to receive a presentation later on in this budget about the first month's impact of the Better Bus Network and how that is doing. I will draw your attention though to something new that's in our report. on items, in the general manager's, report near the back, page 55 of the I'm sorry, 66 of the general manager's report. Near the back of your packet, we're starting to report ridership on van pools. If you recall, one of our COVID strategies, one of our better bus network strategies was knowing that we were reducing some amounts of service in areas, we were going to start offering and subsidizing van pools. We're carrying about, between 4,000 and 5,000 passenger trips per month with 21 different van pools. If that van pool was one of our routes, it would be in one of the top 10 of our routes. And the productivity is fairly high as well. So far, so good. With right out of the gate, first 3 months, 21 van pools carrying about 5,000 passengers per month. That's something new for us to do, and we're going to hopefully keep growing that because it's a very inexpensive way for us to get public transit riders and count those riders against our goals. That concludes my report.
Okay, thank you, Carl. And no actions needed on
No,
this.
it's just to give you a sense of where things are going.
Okay, board, any comments?
Yes, thank you. A couple of questions,
Yeah.
Carl, about the ridership chart on page 3. First question is, you mentioned that you only see ridership levels at 50% of what they were before the pandemic. I know with the network change, it's difficult to sort of figure out maybe exactly where that is, but if I asked you off the top of your head, where have the ridership levels recovered more than in other places?
Oh, more than in other places. I would say in Salinas and South County. I think the where we're going to have trouble, and the question with our ad hoc committee that we're trying to lift off the ground here. I think we've queried some dates for the committee to meet. Yeah, Mary Ann and Anna, yeah. Is how much do we want to compare ourselves to the pre-pandemic? Because pre-pandemic, we had buses running around the Presidio, running around in circles, taking soldiers around. Counting trips. They counted as trips, but they really weren't. Were they doing what we wanted to accomplish now with the better bus network, which is to put service into these disadvantaged communities? So it's my question is that going to be the comparison you'll want to see? Because it was real easy for us to pick up riders on the Presidio complex, but it wasn't really serving the community, or was it really just serving that campus? What's the benefit to all of the county for that? But that was, gosh, 900,000 trips a year just running around the campus up on the Presidio, running in the circle around the campus. So that's where we're missing the most ridership, and whether we'll ever get that 100% back or not is a good question. But we're seeing good growth in Salinas and South County.
So you think, so if we just considered like Salinas, the area, we counted the number of people that got on the bus last month versus in Salinas within the city versus the number of people that got on the bus 4 years ago in Salinas. Those numbers are roughly the same.
Oh, no, we're still,
50%.
I don't have that. I don't have
Higher
that
than
data.
50%.
Yeah, there are areas that are higher than 50%. So 50% is an average. So there are some areas that are higher than 50%, some that are lower than 50%. We can dig down and get the data for you if that's of interest. I just don't have it today. What's that?
I guess we'll see. The 3 of us will see.
Yeah. We have our data, not her official title, but she's our data guru. Emma here, she digs deep into the data and really enjoys it. So
Okay. And then my other question about this chart is, when I look at this, when I look at the difference between like January 2020 and March 2020, we see the drop in monthly ridership and revenue hours. We see that the drop in revenue hours was less. And so I assume that the inference I could draw from that is that longer trips, people are taking longer trips versus like people that were on the longer bus rides are still on the longer bus rides, those decreased less.
You can,
Because
you can make that inference. I don't know if it's real or not. I'd like to dig in, whether that's factual or not, is. So I'd say correlation isn't necessarily causation. Well,
we lost, by the time we get to April, we lost 85% of our passenger boardings, 85% of our ridership,
right,
but we only lost 40% of our hours.
correct. So you're talking about during the beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, okay. Got it. So early in the early days, yeah, we did not want to lay off workers. So we kept buses out there, even though we knew they weren't full or empty, or they were more empty. And then we also had to implement social distancing. So a bus that was pre-pandemic carrying 40 people, we were forcing those buses, if they had 12 people, we said no more can come on this bus. So we are running 2 buses to manage loads, to keep the social distancing at one point. Now we're not doing that. We just don't have the same number of people riding the bus because there aren't as many people going to work in hospitality and not as many students going to college. Those numbers are still down. So the physical people aren't here. So they're not here to make those trips.
Okay.
And that's where I think over the next several years for us to get our ridership back, hospitality is going to have to come back to full employment and the colleges are going to have to come back to full enrollment, or we're going to have to find a new customer base. So those are the longer term issues that we're going to be kicking around.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, and I see Mike LaBarre has his hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple questions. So on page 1 of attachment 1 for the fixed route dashboard, when we have our goals and minimums for passengers, that fluctuates, correct, Carl?
It has in the past. I think starting this year now with the Better Bus Network, where I'm going to say since COVID, we flatlined the ridership and said, we're just going to peg the ridership at what our number was. And we don't want to lose any more than that. It wasn't a very sophisticated approach to that measurement. In the past, pre-COVID, we would say, well, we want to see a 2% increase in ridership, or, we would set some goal within the budget of what we were trying to accomplish. For the past 3 years, we've just been pegging a flat line and what did we do last year? Okay, let's not do less than that. Coming up for this next year's budget, we're going to want to probably get back to doing setting a more sophisticated goal for ridership. We've just been not knowing how to respond in COVID, just setting a flat, let's not do less than last year. And that was been about it. And we've been doing better. It's been hard for us to control or predict.
Okay, yeah, all right. I just want to get clarification. I appreciate that. I do believe that going forward, since we did the redesign of the network, it'd be more applicable to start those metrics based on where we're at. It is nice to see from 2022 to 2023, what is that, about 11 or 12% increase in ridership? On the 2023, how much of that would be, how much of the Better Bus Network implementation would be incorporated in that?
2 weeks.
Okay.
These reports are through December 31st.
Okay.
And the Better Bus Network went up on December 10th. So 3 weeks of 21 days of data, and during major storms and a holiday. So not necessarily super reflective, although we do have, you're going to get a report later on in this agenda where we have our January preliminary data for a full month of the Better Bus Network, and you'll see that, and I think you'll be pleased.
And then my last question is, I agree with what you said about the fare box recovery ratio. And it's really not indicative of the performance and the value of the agency. Is this something that the board should look at, maybe either creating a statement, have a discussion about, so we can get it on the record, and to provide data for like CTA and APTA?
Yeah, when we have some specific language for you to respond to, we'll do that. I'm actually having a meeting at 2 p.m. today with the state transportation committee members, staff, to talk about this very issue. And they're trying to find a way. I'm going to say the state is amenable and agreeable to lifting this requirement. They just have to find a way to do it because it's been in place since the mid-70s. And so now they're looking for a path forward to move this requirement off the books and not make it punitive. We'll still have to report it to the state, but not make it punitive on our funding as it has been in the past if we don't hit specific targets.
Okay, because honestly, I think the more important data metric would be the value of the savings you provided to those low income riders and what that really means. So we get money back from them, but they also save money and those dollars go into the economy, and that's not accounted for. Instead of buying that car, paying for the gas and all the taxes and the maintenance, this offers, I know you'll agree, we all wholeheartedly agree, a much cheaper way to get to where they need. And I wish we could somehow calculate a number for that too, because it could be Farebox plus that value. And because they are getting value into the economy that's not being accounted for. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mike. And I'll kind of chime in on that one. That would be a question I would have, is would the metrics, measure in metrics, how do we measure the longer trips? Like Carl, you mentioned the Presidio or the DLI, with the shorter trips and more trips being counted versus the longer trips to South County, like
Yeah.
from Monterey County. How do we, do how are we going to break
We measure it.
the measurements? I mean, that's,
We have a committee that's going to be discussing that very thing, and I think staff can walk the board members through what tools we have. And we do have any number of tools that we can track boardings by census tract, by disadvantaged community, by line, and by city. So there are ways that we can provide you with some of this data, but that's why we want to have the committee to make certain what you're interested in knowing, what's of value to you as a policymaker, so that we know that we have the tools in place, or what is it going to take for us to get the tools in place to provide the reporting that you feel is necessary to make good policy. So I think, I'm really looking forward to this committee finally meeting and getting going, because I think there's a number of things that we're not measuring now that we could be measuring instead of what we're doing. What we're doing now is what we've been doing for 25 years with very little, a few additions here, a few deletions there, but it's looked pretty much the same. So we could be doing things with greenhouse gas emission savings. We could be doing things with service to disadvantaged communities. As Mr. Labar has stated in the past, the amount of dollars spent locally. There are all sorts of different things. It's really going to depend on what you as a board feel is valuable to make your decisions.
okay, thank you. And I believe we're going in the right direction as a board, down the road with the Better Bus Network. I was looking through some of the California legislation, and it looks like, it's maybe farther down the road, but this is the direction for the elimination of greenhouse gas. Monies that the autonomous vehicles, transit vehicles, there's a whole bunch in there, so that we, things coming down that we probably could start getting ready for, with MST tying that in. So, is there any other comments or questions from the board on this item? I'm not seeing any hands, and with that, I will open it up to the public. For if anyone would like to comment, you have 3 minutes. If you would raise.
Hello.
Hello.
Someone's there.
I'd like to speak to part of what I just heard.
Hello.
I'm Jim Fink. Hello.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Mr.
56-year meteorologist. I started at age 16 in 1967. I was a student of the late, great Harry Geis. I do specific forecasts for specific locations, specific days, up to 2 years in advance with an 88% accuracy rate. I got to tell you that my mentor, Harry Geis, made a discovery in 1936 that nobody in the National Weather Service pays any attention to, and they'll never be able to make the forecast that I make for that reason. That is, the weather that we have today was on the face of the sun 8 days ago. Our weather and climate is 99.97% solar activity. Greenhouse gases have nothing to do with it. And I have to say, I expected the changes in climate that we're getting right now, because we're actually coming out of a little ice age that lasted for about 4 centuries, from the time of the Pilgrim till the late 20th century. I knew back in 1959 this was going to happen. But it's happening because our sun is changing from a red giant star to a yellow dwarf star. And greenhouse gases or anything else, we're not going to alter climate change, because our climate is all in the star we call the sun. And we have nothing to do with it. All the air pollution in the world maybe makes 0.03% influence on climate, period. So what you hear from Al Gore and others is bad science. It's bogus. And I say that from 55 years of experience with weather and climate. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else wanting to make public comment? Is still open. And I am not seeing,
No, I do
Any
not see any
hands?
other hands raised or anyone indicating a desire to speak remotely, and there's no one here in the conference room.
okay. With that, we'll go ahead and close public comment on this item, and this was information only. We'll move on to item 4.2, and this is update on preliminary Better Bus Network implementation results, including South County circulators. And Michelle?
Good
welcome.
morning, committee members. Michelle Overmeyer, Director of Planning and Innovation. For item 4-2, we're going to present in 2 parts. So the first part, me and Emma Patel, our associate planner, will talk about the Better Bus Network. And then the second part, we'll hand it over to Lisa Reinheimer for the South County circulators. If we can get the presentation up, please. So as Carl mentioned, your general manager's report has information on December. And we had 9 days under the old network and December 10th through 31st under the current network. When we were preparing our board agenda package, January hadn't completed, so we couldn't include that information. So the presentation we're going to do this morning is focused on preliminary numbers for January. So I have Emma Patel here, our associate planner, and she is our data guru, as Carl said. Next slide, please. So December 10th was the day that we implemented the Better Bus Network. It's been 9 weeks. During that 9 weeks, we had holidays. The colleges were on winter break for about 5 weeks. And then we had historic rain and flooding. So keep that in mind as we go through this data. Next slide, please. So we noticed that we've had a drop in customer service reports. There were a number that came in December. It's higher than normal. 21 reports were sent over to the planning department for us to investigate and follow up on. As riders have become more comfortable with the new schedules, we're seeing a notable drop in those customer service reports. We have had a number of them come in where customers indicate that they're concerned that the longer distance to get to a bus stop could be challenging for people with disabilities. And those particular comments we forwarded on to our mobility services department so that we can inform our customers of the different options we have. We have rides, door-to-door service, we have taxi vouchers, and travel training for people that need a little bit of assistance. Some of the comments that we had received in December and early January were related to Pacific Grove service. We had a targeted outreach event there last month. We had 2 community meetings to get some more information out to the public. We had also received some reports requesting early morning service from Castroville to get customers into Salinas by 8 a.m. We continue to receive requests for service up to Santa Cruz and San Jose. So I guess we've, with the Better Bus Network, we've better matched our service level with our staffing level. And so I'm going to hand it over to Emma, who's going to review some of the related stats with you. Next slide.
So since for the first full month of the Better Bus Network, we've seen fewer cancellations compared to last January. The main reason for cancellations continues to be a driver shortage. However, we've had fewer driver shortage related cancellations as well as overall cancellations. Next slide, please. We've also been seeing changing trends already since we began the Better Bus Network on December 10th. MST is impacted by seasonal ridership, which means in the summer months, we tend to see higher ridership, and in the winter months, we tend to see lower ridership. So over the summer, we offered free fares on Sundays, and we had an average of about 4,300 people per Sunday using the bus. The first Sunday of the Better Bus Network, we also offered free fares, and we had just over 3,200 passengers. So that's only about 1,000 fewer passengers than in the summer, despite the fact that in the winter time, we see drops in ridership, and it was a rainy day, which negatively impacts ridership. Next slide, please. We also see a ridership drop between the first and second Sunday of December. Typically, this tends to be a pretty big decrease. In 2022, the first Sunday of December was under our old network, and the second Sunday was the first weekend of the Better Bus Network. We did see a decrease in ridership as expected. However, it was a lot lower than we were expecting. Typically, we'd expect to see a 36% decrease, and we only saw a 12% decrease. Next slide, please. We've been seeing increasing ridership since the Better Bus Network began. Preliminary data shows a 21% increase compared to last January, and we're at 48% of ridership compared to a pre-COVID average. Next slide, please. So with the new fare system, passengers can make transfers within 2 hours for no average of 400 boardings per day made using transfers. That's about 8% of our total ridership. Next slide, please. Contactless boardings have also seen an increase. In January 2023, we saw a 48% increase in contactless boardings and a 75% increase in fare cap trips compared to January 2022. There were 758 unique riders, which is over 50% of all contactless riders who met this 2-hour fare cap at least once. Next slide, please.
So this slide here has a side-by-side comparison of January of 2022 with last month. And this is showing changes in boarding. So we've seen increases in Salinas and Monterey. And that could be attributed to the fact that we're forcing transfers now under the Better Bus Network. It's hard to tell here, but Gonzales had a slight decrease in boardings between those 2 Januaries. And again, that could be because of the weather. Next slide. So this chart here shows locations where ridership increased at least 25% compared to January of last year. So these are the top, the 10 locations. I did want to highlight that really dark circle is East Garrison, and we didn't have service there in January of 2022, so that's why it looks so
100% increase.
it looks good. And then the other one is Paso Robles, the bottom right there shows a 75% increase. That service, our line 84, has pretty low ridership, so any slight change is going to have a big percentage increase. Next slide. And then Carl mentioned the van pools. Before the Better Bus Network took effect, we knew that we would have some gaps in our service. Big Sur, Santa Cruz, Santa Clara County. So our van pool program started in October, and you can see that there's a strong pattern for travel from the San Jose area to the Presidio. And as Carl mentioned, if this was a fixed route, it'd be equivalent to the ridership of the 9th highest fixed route in our service. Next slide. So this just summarizes our very preliminary numbers. Again, we've only been in the new network for about 9 weeks, but we're seeing fewer customer service reports, fewer canceled trips. There are changes that we're seeing already in ridership, and it's starting to increase. Next slide. So we'll pause right now and we'll take any questions you have on Better Bus Network, and then we will move over to the South County circulators.
I just have, is it possible to get a copy of this?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And for, I must have been sleeping or something when you did the van pool slide, so we can going back to the van pool slide again. And sort of, I just didn't understand it.
I think it's back to Scott.
You had the map of San Jose.
There we go.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to figure out like what the big orange blob around San Jose means.
That's where people are coming from. And they're traveling these are trips going to the Presidio. So we know that there are staff, faculty, language instructors that live in the San Jose area that are using the van pools to get to work on the Presidio.
So there were 14,114 passenger trips during the month of January on these van pools.
Right. No, during the 3 months,
October to December.
October through December.
Oh, right. Okay.
And the blobs are simply urban zone boundaries that the trips are originating within that boundary somewhere. So that is the federal government's designation for that boundary where those trips are starting. It's not giving you an exact location, and then you can see the Monterey zone and the Salinas zone. That's just a map that our vendor enterprise provides us as far as a distribution of what urban zones the trips are generating from.
So these 22 van pools, they all end at the Presidio.
Currently, yes, that's where we have the van pools. People have signed up. They're not restricted to that. We could get van pools. I know there are people here in Ryan Ranch that are interested in setting up van pools. So the program is just starting, and the Presidio has an active van pool program manager who has made contact with Enterprise. And so they were the first ones out of the gate to get signed up. We will be doing more with this because we're seeing we can generate ridership for very little cost. So that's a good thing.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's the only reason that everything's at the Presidio is because they signed up first. We will work to get others signed up. Other major employers signed up. We could have a Chomp van pool, for instance, or a SVMH van pool. There's nothing limiting it to the Presidio.
Is there, do you have any more reports on this other than like just that you've already produced, not asking for any more work on sort of the van pool stuff?
In the
Summary
in the
report.
operations report, in your agenda. It's part of the general manager's report, and it is, see if I can find the page.
Is it,
It's posted on the website.
Right, but I'm trying to direct them to the exact page that we'll find it. The 66th page of the general manager's report. There are a number of statistics related to the van pools, and this is the first time we've reported it, so we're not even sure ourselves what we want to look at here. This is just the data that we're getting, and we're going to have to start analyzing over time to see what's important to us as far as van pools are concerned.
okay, any other questions or comments? I see, Mike Labar, his hand raised.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the information. I have a question on the transfer times. It's one of the things when I talk about the Better Bus Network is that the design was that there'd be transfers less than 5 minutes. How has that been going?
Well, we're still looking at that. It was a little challenging up front. When we first changed over, the weather wasn't very good. And I guess I'd say overall, we're doing better. There are some instances where customers might have to ask their driver to call in and ask the connecting bus to wait a couple minutes. But we can come back to you with more information on that in the future.
That is something I think is really important to monitor, because that is just really about efficiency. But just for comparison, before we had significantly longer transfer times on average, would that be correct to say?
Yeah, some of the routes were not coordinated very well, so you might have to wait 20 minutes or more for your next bus. So that has changed a lot in the Better Bus Network, about 5 to 10 minutes.
Right now, okay, right now we're in the 5 to 10 minute range.
Yes.
That's pretty awesome. So great on staff. I mean, I do want to see that 5 minute or less, because I think that is a huge selling point. And it was something I was very impressed that when you did the redesign to able to do that. So going forward, some kind of metric that lets us know where we're at on those transfer times would be great. Thank you, Chair.
If I may respond to that, Chair?
Yes.
This is just an anecdotal information, Mike, related to this. A colleague of MST's who works for a local nonprofit in a management capacity has committed to a carless lifestyle, and they ride their bike and use transit and ride share instead of owning a car, even though they could, all intents and purposes, have the income to afford one, I would imagine. They travel from Seaside to see their parents in Gonzales every weekend. And I happened to cross this person in Salinas one day, and they told me their trip has been reduced by half an hour each way on that weekend trip, solely due to the change in the transfer time. So they're waiting less time for that connecting bus, and they were very grateful to have that extra time back, not standing around at the Salinas. Not that standing at the Salinas Transit Center is a bad thing, but there were other things they would rather do with their time.
That's good information. It's really good information.
So, but that is, we can do some more, give you some more data rather than anecdotes for the future.
I like the antidote as well. I mean, that's great to hear, because that's what I was expecting we're going to be seeing is once we get to that point, it's that seamless connections. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And with that, if there are no other comments, I'll go ahead and open it up to the public. Public comment is open. If you would like to comment.
I don't see anyone. Mike, your hand is still up. I don't see anyone else.
Yes. Hello.
So, is there someone that would like to speak?
Yes. Jim Fink once again.
Go ahead.
And I gotta say, I'm pretty impressed overall with the Better Bus Network. But I definitely would like to see San Jose and Santa Cruz connections restored. Also, with respect to the Line 43, I wish it was back on its old alignment, which took it down South Main to San Joaquin to Pajaro, and then into Romy from Pajaro, because for 21 years I've been a member of St. Ansgar's Lutheran on the corner of San Joaquin and Pajaro. There's other people that I'm aware of at St. Paul's Episcopal, San Miguel at Pajaro, who no longer have bus connections to church. So I wish they would restore the jog into San Joaquin Street and Pajaro Street en route to SVMH. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, comment taken. And it is any hands up? Or
Do not see anyone else. I do not.
okay, with that, thank you,
Oh,
Michelle.
hold on. There's a Melody Bahu has her hand up. I'm
Oh.
sorry.
Go ahead, Melody.
Are you able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I think most would agree that MPC is one of the most important places in our community. Perhaps there's one thing you haven't considered in taking away the bus routes that go up the hill to the top and in some way the center of our campus. With that bus come passengers onto campus who are not attending MPC, perhaps on their way to Target or wherever. I believe this plants a seed in their minds of attending college or becoming a returning student to the college. It contributes to their feeling comfortable at MPC, just the fact of being in the middle of it and thereby seeing it. Also, if I were limited in my physical mobility, as some of our students are, I would want as much independence as possible. The bus, the one that everybody takes, provides this. It's great that rides, taxis, and van pools are sometimes available, but I know from the experiences of our students that it's often not possible for rides to be on time because it's juggling so many passengers and routes. When a student has to attend class at a specific time, it's unlikely to be practical. While the current routes perhaps check the box of, quote, serving MPC, end quote, really that current MPC bus stop stands at the base of a hill. So now there's just one more barrier to getting to the heart of the campus. Previously, students could be dropped off at that centrally located bus stop at the top of the hill, right to where they need to be, near admissions, student services, our welcome center, and basic skill labs that are open to all students, but specifically designed for students with disabilities. It seems because of someone's good intentions that the bus stop was put right there. MST riders now not only lose an opportunity to take that imaginative leap of visualizing themselves as an MPC student, now the most vulnerable of these riders face this hill, an inequitable barrier. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Ms. Bahu.
Let me see if there's anybody else. I do not see anyone else with their hands raised.
Okay, thank you for those comments. With that, we'll close public comment and we will ask Michelle Overmeyer to come up. Is this a two-part or?
This will be Lisa Reinheimer's portion on the South County circulators.
Yes, for the South County Circulator.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. Lisa Reinheimer, Assistant General Manager for MST. This will be brief. We've been working on the South County circulators for some time. Of course, King City was first out of the gate, but we are now working on a request for quotes from an on-call list of engineering consultants that was kindly provided by the City of Gonzales. Quotes are due at the beginning of March, and we should be able to get a contract underway later on in the month and start designing the bus stops. It doesn't sound like it's a very complicated thing, but sometimes there are certain areas that require utilities and what have you to be looked at very closely. So we'll be looking at the whole thing with an engineering firm on board so that we can have construction ready materials for a contractor to start work. So that's where we're at. We've made some good progress, and I don't have necessarily a timeline yet until we get an engineering firm on board. Then we'll be able to share that information.
Lisa,
Mhm.
thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate this. I've been in contact with our public works director, and he indicated, he sent me the email regarding these circulators. This is for all three cities, correct?
Correct.
Yes. And by the way, it's March 7th is what the deadline is for the consultant or for the contractors to submit their
Correct.
Their
Quotes.
Thank you. So I appreciate that we are finally getting on this. I apologize that it has taken as long as it has. I believe that there were many things that were involved, and now we're on our way. So thank you to MST for following up on this.
Absolutely. We also have a fantastic newer project management coordinator on board, former MST employee coming back to MST, and he's terrific. He's a sponge. He's really taken the ball and run with it. So I think we're in really, really good hands right now.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Any comments? This was information only. Not seeing any. I'll open it up to public for just a moment. And I am not seeing any.
Nope.
Okay. Thank you, Michelle. And public comment is closed. Carl, do we have any actions needed for closed session?
We have no closed session.
Okay,
The only action we have is to adjourn this
all right.
August committee.
So we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting, and we will be going into the regular board meeting in about 7 minutes. Thank you, everyone, for your comments
Thank you.
Thank you.
and reports.
You wanna gavel it closed?
Now, okay, yeah.